Going to pieces under that cocky hat of yours like a rotten tub. If you ever had it backbone, he's all been dissolved in booze. Well, I'm sick and tired of your drunken labradors.
Another place to look for clues about characters is in what they do. The saying, actions speak louder than words, is true in literature. You have to look beyond the surface to find out what people are really like. Another way in which we all reveal something about ourselves is our created environment. For example, look at the type of car you drive. Often a car becomes a personal statement about who we are, or at least who we would like to be. What can you say about this person? Think then about the ways that characters can reveal themselves: physical appearance, speech, actions, and created environment. And if you carefully balance these attributes against each other, you should get a pretty clear picture of who that character is. To write an essay about character, you need to identify some trait that you think is important. Ideally, the trait you choose should be related in some way to the point of the story. This can be your thesis. What can you say about George Bailey in It's a Wonderful Life?
I want the board to know that George gave up his trip to Europe to help straighten things out here these past few months. Good luck to you at school, George.
He was well liked by all the townspeople. Why? What is it about George Bailey that makes you like him? His unselfishness? His willingness to go to bat for the common man?
You're right when you say my father was no businessman. I know that. Why he ever started this cheap penny-ante building alone, I'll never know. But neither you nor anybody else can say anything against his character, because his whole life was... Why, in the 25 years since he and Uncle Billy started this thing, he never once thought of himself. Isn't that right, Uncle Billy? He didn't save enough money to send Harry to school, let alone me. But he did help a few people get out of your slums, Mr. Potter. And what's wrong with that? Well, here, you're all businessmen here. Doesn't make them better citizens? Doesn't make them better customers? You said that what'd you say just a minute ago? They had to wait and save their money before they even thought of a decent home? Wait for what? Until their children grow up and leave them? Until they're so old and broken down that... Do you know how long it takes a working man to save $5,000? Just remember this, Mr. Potter, that this rabble you're talking about, they do most of the working and paying and living and dying in this community. Well, is it too much to have them work and pay and live and die in a couple of decent rooms and a bath?
You might say something like, the main character, George Bailey, gives us insight into the unselfish nature of a common man. After focusing your discussion around a particular trait, you can provide evidence from the story that supports your view. As you look at the narrator or main character, it is important not to confuse that person with the author. An easy way to understand the relationship between character and author is to imagine a ventriloquist and his dummy. It is really the ventriloquist throwing his voice that creates the character. The manner in which an author throws his voice in a poem or narrative is the point of view, an important element in literature. Who tells a story makes a big difference in how the story is told. Imagine a description of a typical day at college as told by a straight-A student who has just been awarded a 4-year scholarship, and then as told by a student who has just been put on probation for low grades. Point of view may be classified in different ways: first person, third person omniscient, third person limited omniscient, third person objective, and stream of consciousness. Briefly, a story told from first person point of view uses the pronoun I. The story is told firsthand by one of the characters. Most stories are told in some form of third person. That is, the narrator refers to all characters as he or she. If the narrator is omniscient, that means he is all-knowing. He is able to tell what everyone in the story is thinking, and is able to know what will happen before it actually does occur. Often, this type of narrator will address readers directly and even interpret events for them. Stream of consciousness is used to show the thoughts of a character as they would actually occur within the mind. In other words, fragments of thoughts, sensations, memories, and emotions are merged together to imitate the thought process. Stream of consciousness is more than just a description of what a person is thinking. It is also a record of how that person thinks. For example,
what have I done to have been given children like these? Benjamin was punishment enough, and now, for her to have no more regard for me, her own mother, I've suffered for her, dreamed and planned and sacrificed.
To analyze a work of literature from the perspective of point of view, you need to describe what the point of view is. In Graham Greene's short story, The Basement Room, the entire story is told from the point of view of a young boy. His limited knowledge about life determines how he interprets the events that occur. This would be quite a different story if told by a third person or if narrated by a more mature character. We've covered a lot of territory in this program, from paraphrasing to analyzing to interpreting. Let's review some of the key points. Remember to be active in your reading. First, paraphrase the events as they occurred. This will help your comprehension. As you begin to explain the work, remember to narrow your focus sufficiently so that you can treat a limited topic in some depth. Use the elements of characterization and point of view to strengthen your thesis. Select details from the story that provide evidence to support your position. And remember to interpret the work, not to simply retell the events. Literature, unlike other things we read, like newspapers, magazine articles, and textbooks, helps give shape and form to our emotions. Over 300 years ago, Pascal wrote, "The heart has its reasons, which reason cannot know." In order to write about literature, then, we must be willing to become involved in it.
Identify the point of view of the narrator in each of the following passages. Is the narrator's point of view first person, third person omniscient, third person